At exactly 7:12 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from my older sister. Attached were photos of a luxury ballroom, a designer dress, crystal centerpieces, and a $700 birthday cake. Beneath them was one sentence: "Wire me $7,200 tonight. My daughter deserves the perfect sweet 16." I thought she was joking, until 10 minutes later, my father called and said, "If you don't pay, don't bother calling yourself family anymore." They thought I would give in like I always had. Instead, before sunrise, I made one phone call that turned their dream celebration into the biggest family disaster anyone had ever seen. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 30 years old, and I live in Seattle, Washington. I work as a financial consultant, a career that taught me two things early in life. Every dollar should have a purpose, and every promise should have a limit. Unfortunately, my family believed only the first part. To them, because I had a stable career and lived comfortably, I had somehow become the answer to every financial problem they created. The biggest source of those problems was always my older sister, Melissa. Melissa loved appearances. If someone else bought a new car, she wanted a nicer one. If another family hosted an elegant party, she wanted something even bigger. And when her daughter, Ava, turned 16, Melissa decided the celebration had to be unforgettable. For months, every phone call somehow turned into a conversation about the Sweet 16. She talked about a luxury ballroom overlooking the water, a designer gown that cost more than my first apartment's monthly rent, professional photographers, custom decorations, live entertainment, and a $700 birthday cake. I smiled politely and assumed she had saved for it. Then one Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed. Melissa had sent nearly 20 photos of the venue, the dress, the flowers, and the cake. At first, I thought she simply wanted my opinion. Instead, beneath the pictures was one sentence: "Wire me $7,200 tonight. Ava deserves the perfect sweet 16." I actually laughed because I thought it had to be a joke. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my father. His voice wasn't asking. It was demanding. "Natalie," he said, "your sister has done enough for this family. If you refuse to help now, don't expect us to treat you like family anymore." I looked at the phone for a long moment before quietly replying, "I'm not sending the money." The silence that followed told me my answer had just started a war. When my father hung up, I didn't cry. I simply sat there staring at my reflection in the dark kitchen window because, if I was honest with myself, none of it had surprised me. This wasn't really about a birthday party. It never was. It was about a pattern that had followed me since I was old enough to remember. Melissa had always been the center of our family's universe. If she wanted something, everyone adjusted their lives around her. If she made a mistake, someone else was expected to fix it. And somehow that someone usually ended up being me. My parents had a favorite phrase whenever I questioned it: "Natalie, you're the responsible one." At first, it sounded like a compliment. As I got older, I realized it was an assignment. Being responsible meant I was expected to sacrifice quietly while Melissa received applause for simply asking. When she dropped out of community college, my parents said she was finding herself. When I graduated with honors, my father shook my hand and asked if I could help Melissa pay her overdue rent. When Melissa wanted to open a small online boutique, I loaned her money because she promised she'd pay me back within 6 months. She never did. Instead, she thanked me by asking for another loan a year later. When her car broke down, I helped. When unexpected medical bills arrived, I helped. When Ava needed school supplies or tutoring, I helped without hesitation because none of those situations were her fault. I never kept score. I honestly believed helping family was simply what people did. Looking back, I wasn't treated like a daughter or a sister. I was treated like an emergency fund that happened to have a heartbeat. The Sweet 16 wasn't an exception. It was simply the most expensive expectation yet. Then, just before midnight, another text from my father appeared. There were only 8 words: "Pay, or you're no longer part of this family." I read the message twice. Then I placed my phone face down on the table. For the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering how to make things right. I was wondering why I had spent so many years trying to earn a place in a family that only valued what I could give. I barely slept that night. Not because my father's words kept replaying in my mind, but because I finally stopped blaming myself for them. Around midnight, I opened my laptop and logged into the folder where I kept every contract, receipt, and email related to Melissa's party. At first, I only wanted to remind myself that saying no had been the right decision. Instead, I discovered something my family had completely forgotten. 6 months earlier, Melissa had called me in tears because she said planning such a large event was overwhelming.
She didn't ask me to pay for it back then.
She only wanted my help organizing everything because, in her words, you're good with contracts and numbers. She was right. I spent several evenings comparing venues, negotiating prices, and helping her stretch her budget. Because of my work, I knew event managers, photographers, decorators, and caterers who trusted me after years of handling corporate events. They offered generous discounts simply because I recommended them. The ballroom reduced its rental fee. The photographer included an extra hour at no charge. The decorator waived several setup costs. Even the bakery agreed to upgrade the cake design without increasing the price. Melissa proudly told everyone she had negotiated incredible deals. I never corrected her. Watching my niece get excited about her birthday felt more important than receiving credit. Then I opened the final contract. My stomach tightened. Almost every major reservation listed one additional name beneath Melissa's. Mine. Not because I was paying for the party. Because several vendors had required a financially established guarantor before approving discounted rates and flexible payment schedules. I had signed those guarantees as a favor, believing Melissa would honor every agreement herself. Now, after being told my daughters weren't even considered real family, those signatures looked very different. I read each contract carefully, line by line. Everything was clear. I wasn't responsible for financing the celebration. But I also wasn't required to remain financially connected to it. At exactly 12:43 a.m., I closed the final document. Then I picked up my phone. For the first time that entire day, I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I finally understood something my family never had. Kindness should never become a lifetime obligation. And before I went to bed, I quietly decided that, starting tomorrow, my generosity would no longer be taken for granted. At exactly 1 o'clock in the morning, I poured myself a cup of tea, sat at my dining table, and looked at my phone for several quiet minutes. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to ruin anyone's celebration. I simply refused to keep carrying responsibilities for people who had just told me I wasn't family unless I opened my wallet. I dialed the first number. It was the event coordinator for the ballroom. She recognized my voice immediately. "Natalie, is everything ready for Saturday?" she asked warmly. "It should be," I replied. "I'm calling because I need to remove myself as the financial guarantor on the reservation. I won't be connected to the event moving forward." There was a brief silence before she answered professionally. "I understand. We'll update the file. We'll just need the primary client to provide a replacement guarantee or complete the remaining balance before we can continue." "That's perfectly reasonable," I said. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I contacted the photographer, the decorator, the bakery, the entertainment company. Every conversation was calm and respectful. I never asked anyone to cancel the party. I never complained about Melissa. I simply explained that I was withdrawing my personal guarantees and that all future financial matters should be handled directly with the person hosting the event. Each vendor gave me almost the same response. Without my guarantee, they would need immediate confirmation of payment before moving forward. That wasn't punishment. It was standard business practice. By the time I finished the last call, it was nearly 2 in the morning. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders felt lighter. I shut down my laptop, turned off the kitchen light, and went to bed beside my phone without checking it again. Meanwhile, my sister slept peacefully, completely unaware that every vendor on her guest list had updated their files overnight. She still believed everything was ready. She still believed I would quietly solve every problem the way I always had. The next morning, at exactly 7:30 a.m., her phone started ringing. Then it rang again, and again. By the time she answered the fourth call, the party she had spent months planning was no longer the celebration she thought she was going to have. At exactly 7:30 a.m., my phone vibrated for the first time. I ignored it. A minute later, it rang again. Then again. By the time I finished pouring my coffee, there were 12 missed calls waiting for me. Most were from Melissa. The rest came from my father. I already knew what had happened. The ballroom had called first. Without a financial guarantor, they needed immediate confirmation of the remaining balance before finalizing the reservation. Then the decorator called. Then the bakery. Then the photographer. One after another, every vendor simply followed the agreements they had signed months earlier. No one canceled the party. They only asked to be paid directly. Apparently, Melissa had never expected those conversations. At 8:04, my father left his first voicemail. "Natalie, answer your phone. There's been some kind of misunderstanding." By 8:17, his tone had changed. "Natalie, call me back immediately." A few minutes later, relatives started texting. My aunt wanted to know why Melissa was crying. One cousin asked whether I'd gone too far. Another relative accused me of trying to embarrass the family. Not one of them asked what had happened before reaching their conclusions. I set my phone on silent and took Lily to her swimming lesson. Watching her laugh with her friends reminded me why I had stopped saying yes to everything. When we returned an hour later, I glanced at my screen. 43 missed calls. 7 voicemails. More text messages than I cared to count. For years, nobody noticed the quiet things I did that kept life running smoothly. Now that I had stepped back, everyone noticed their absence. And for the first time, the burden of fixing everything no longer belonged to me. It belonged to the people who had always assumed I would never stop carrying it. I finally answered my father's 44th call just after noon. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled sharply. "Natalie," he said, "the venue says the contracts changed overnight. The decorator is asking for payment. The photographer won't confirm the booking. What did you do?" His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was desperate. I answered as calmly as I could. "I didn't cancel Melissa's party." There was silence. I only removed myself from financial responsibility. "But everything is falling apart," he said. "No," I replied quietly. "Everything is simply being placed where it should have been from the beginning." Before he could interrupt, I continued. "For years, I helped because I wanted Ava to have opportunities. I helped because I believed families supported each other. But somewhere along the way, my kindness stopped being appreciated and became expected."
He didn't argue.
I could almost hear him replaying the last 24 hours in his mind. Then Melissa grabbed the phone. "You started this," she shouted. "You need to call everyone back and fix it." I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "I didn't create this situation, Melissa. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own choices." Another long silence followed. Finally, I said the words I should have spoken years earlier. "I hope Ava has a wonderful birthday."
She deserves that.
"But I will no longer pay for dreams that belong to someone else." No one spoke after that. The line stayed quiet for several seconds. Then my father softly whispered, "I think we've taken you for granted." I didn't answer. Some truths don't need a response. They only need to be heard. I never found out whether Melissa's sweet 16 looked exactly the way she had imagined. And honestly, it didn't matter anymore. That weekend, instead of sitting through another family gathering where my worth was measured by my bank account, I took Ava's favorite gift from me, a simple sketchbook and art set, and mailed it with a birthday card that wished her happiness, confidence, and a future built on kindness rather than appearances. Then I spent the afternoon hiking with friends, laughing more than I had in months. That was when I realized the greatest gift I had ever given myself wasn't money. It was a boundary. Helping someone is an act of love. Being forced to help is not. The moment you stop confusing guilt with responsibility is the moment you finally begin building a life where your value is measured by who you are, not by what you're willing to pay for.